Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Out and About AF. I'm your host, Gabe, and this is the podcast where we share sobriety journeys from individuals from the LGBTQIA plus community and our allies. And I'm really excited for today's guest. We recently met. He's going to be coming to my retreat, and turns out Dallas is a very small town. When you bring down the gay community, and then on top of that you bring down the sober community, you break it down to that. So but no, I'm super glad he is here. I'm excited to hear his story and share it with all of you. So everyone, please help me welcome David. How are you doing today?
Gabe, I'm doing well. Doing well. It's another Monday. Nice, another spring day. So I do love when we move into spring.
Yeah,
It's
no, I
always nice.
spring is like my favorite. I
Hmm.
hate the cold weather, but
Yeah.
with the spring brings the allergies. Well, yeah, again, I'm glad you're here. I'm excited to hear everything you have to say. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump
Okay.
in it. Let me know where you were born. Where are you from?
Okay. All right. Well, I was born in a small town in Kentucky called Campbellsville, Kentucky. Yeah, I'm the youngest of three. My brother's 7 years older and my sister is 9 years older. So back in those days, I don't know if children were actually really, really planned, but I suspect I really wasn't planned, but I was a nice surprise. And what's funny is back in those days, there's a picture of my mom with my brother and my sister, and she's pregnant with me, and she has a cigarette in her hand. That's just how it was in the '60s. I was born
Oh
in
yeah.
19 in June 23rd, 1962. I have I don't know if it's a curse or a privilege to be kind of on the cusp of Gemini and Cancer. So when you get with me, you just never know what's going to happen. I may be nesting and wanting my home, but then also just to flip of the switch and just be someone else. The Gemini trait. So I really like it when I get to read my horoscope because I get two choices and I can decide which one I like best. In Campbellsville was a small town. You know what you know.
Mhm,
I didn't know anything really about what the town was and wasn't until much, much later in life. And I think
mhm.
that's how things are. As you mature and things just sort of like, aha, that's what that was.
Right.
But yeah, I went to Catholic school. That was traumatic enough for me. I didn't go to kindergarten or preschool or anything like that. So my first introduction to school was first grade and nuns. Yeah, yeah. But luckily, by the time I got to first grade, I could do some basic reading and write my name and count and do the ABCs and all that kind of stuff. So, I felt, I guess I was prepared enough.
Mhm,
But it became real clear that there were some areas of school that I was just really lost on and just kinda, like, trying to figure out, "Why am I here?"
mhm.
And that really set the tone for a lot of things. And in growing up, it's like, I look around in my environment and like, "Why am I here?"
Right. That
How did
questioning.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like, yeah, the questioning, "Where did I come from?" And all that stuff. And,
Mhm.
I mean I'm glad I'm here, at this point. But yeah. And even at an early age, like first, second grade, that was my first time with a bunch of other kids around me that my own age.
Mhm.
So that was a new experience. And I remember the first time I ever had a black kid as a friend.
Mm. Mhm.
I just wasn't exposed to that. And again, I guess, I don't know. And I started seeing, okay, there's all these different people.
Mhm.
But I also saw some very cute boys, even at first grade.
Mhm.
I was like, "I like him. I like him." And we would be friends and, we'd run around on the playground and do this and do that, and, you know, help each other cheat on tests and, I was developing my character defects at a very, very young
At Catholic school.
at Catholic school, of course, and then we had a few other nuns that were teachers, and there was one, she was our art teacher, and I absolutely loved her.
Mhm.
And looking back on it now, it's like that creativity, and she was very nurturing and welcoming and just you were you.
Mhm.
Whether I had traits in first or second grade that I was gay outwardly, I don't know. It's hard to tell. But
Right.
I will tell you that at some point the Catholic school lost funding. And so by fourth grade, I was in the public city school system. And so that was a new thing. you
Yeah.
know? And it was okay. It was okay, but it was just a lot, it was different, because we didn't have to go to mass every Monday morning and every
Mm.
Friday afternoon, and we didn't have to, say grace before we had lunch. And well, if you have ever been to a parochial school like that, you kind of know it. So it was interesting is there was a lot more class time and work time.
Yeah.
Yeah. 4th grade started to be a little defining moment because I started noticing differences and a little bit of like there were some kids that I was intimidated by.
Mhm.
One was this kid that he moved down the street from me, and I remember I think I was probably in 3rd grade, and he just moved in and he was riding his bike up the street and I was outside and he stopped and introduced himself and stuff and we became friends. But, he said, "Let's go play basketball." I said, "What? I don't know anything. What do you mean basketball?" He said, "What, you don't know basketball? Baseball?" I mean, I didn't know all that, and so it scared me, and that intimidated me. So that for me, that started putting this barrier or this shell around me.
Yeah.
And then but what it did do, it helped open the door for me to make other friends within my neighborhood.
Mhm.
'Cause I don't know if I would have been the one to go out and seek out those friendships,
Right.
but
Well, really quick, I have a question because, like,
yeah.
so you were the youngest, right?
Yes.
Okay, and so I was the youngest, and there was a, I don't wanna say a large age gap, but there was a pretty big age gap. I have 2 older sisters, and they were closer, and so they always did a lot of stuff. So, I always kinda had to entertain myself. Did you
Yeah.
find that you had to do that as well?
I did. I did. With my sister being the oldest, I will tell you, even to this day, our relationship is incredibly, incredibly close.
Mhm.
And I would seek my sister's approval, and she was always very supportive of me. My brother being the typical middle child, we got along just fine as we grew up. Of course, as he got older, his interests changed and all that.
Mhm.
We're close enough today, close
Yeah.
enough. Close enough. But yeah, I had a very vivid imagination, and I
Yeah.
would create these scenarios and scenes. And I remember the first time I went to the dentist.
Mhm.
Yeah, and this is weird, but I was like all the equipment and all that stuff. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. you know. And then at home, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna set up my own dentist office, and just play dentist and trying to pull the teeth out of my stuffed animals or whatever. And that
Yeah.
was just how it was. And I had the best time, I just
Yeah.
enjoyed myself.
Yeah, and
And
I asked that just because it's like, you grow up a certain way and having to entertain yourself, and then you jump into, kind of first grade, and then it's just kind of like
Mhm,
a almost, I don't know, like maybe a shock or something of like, well, there's other people. So it's like, how do I fully blend in with these
mhm,
people and try to figure that out? And then you go to a public school, and then it's like kind
yeah,
of even further. And then now you're experiencing things that you've never even thought of with sports. So
yes,
it's like, I'm always curious because it's like I always wanted to try to do everything I could growing up. Like I was always involved with something, but it's because I wanted to be a part of something,
mhm.
because I was by myself. So it's just always interesting to hear the youngest of the siblings.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think I did experience that some, but it really wasn't till maybe high school where I really started to want to be part of things.
Mhm.
Now, I will say that, maybe, middle school was always it was tough, especially 7th grade. But
Yeah.
I did get involved in a few more extracurricular activities. They were
Mhm.
usually something creative, music, things like that,
Yeah.
whether it be band or choir or whatever.
Mhm.
I mean, and the typical gay boy, I got involved in band at 4th grade, and they had me try all these different instruments, saxophone, trumpet, and I ended up with a saxophone. And then it
Yeah.
was like, I did that for a while. I was like, man, it was just too heavy to carry. So we stayed in the woodwind family and I ended up with the flute, I
Ok
like, okay, a boy playing a flute. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
how that goes. But I didn't feel different
Mhm.
in band.
Right.
I was part of to an extent, but still internally, I knew, okay, there's something sissy about, yes, being kind of a little sissy fight or whatever about
Right.
playing flute, a boy playing flute. That's a girl's instrument.
Yeah,
They really had some gender roles, flute and clarinet, those types of things. The trumpets were the boys and the saxophones and things
I
like
played the
that.
trumpet.
Did you? I just couldn't get the armature quite right to and
Yeah. No, my
force
sisters
the
played, the clarinet,
yeah.
and I who was it? Oh, I'm blanking right now. The Eagles. I think it Summer Days,
Mhm,
the trumpet
mhm.
in that song?
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that, and I just kinda, like, fell in love with it, and then
Oh, did you?
New Orleans, trumpet and jazz and stuff, so, like, I always gravitated towards the trumpet more,
Yeah.
but also, yes, because it was more, quote, unquote, "boy."
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
what the boys do. So, yeah, I got involved in a few things, and then middle school in Campbellsville was just fine because these were some of the same kids that I had 4th, 5th, 6th grade with and part of
Mhm.
7th grade, and so I didn't necessarily feel completely different.
Right.
The physical education classes intimidated me because most of the time it was basketball or wiffle ball or, whatever. And I started to figure out how to write notes from my parents to excuse me from school. And I think I got so good at my mom and dad's signature that they would, if mom and dad really did write a note for me for something, they would question the signature. They were
Oh,
like,
okay, yeah.
Did you write this? No, no, it's from mom and dad's. It looked like, well, she goes, well, it doesn't look like all these other notes.
Telling the truth this time.
I'm busted. Yeah, this time I'm telling the truth. You can't win or lose. But yeah, and I think one of the defining moments in the sand is when I was in 7th grade. My dad's company transferred him to Bowling Green, Kentucky, which is further south. It is a college town. It's the home of Western Kentucky University,
Mhm.
much larger city in Kentucky comparatively to Campbellsville.
Mm,
Now,
mhm.
one thing I will say just to back up to Campbellsville, the first friend that I made, his name is Michael. He ended up, as an adult, he ended up being the mayor of Campbellsville. It was crazy
Okay.
because we have reconnected through Facebook.
Okay.
Kind of interesting. I mean, just a very, very mild way. Just kind of, oh, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
He's married, has kids, grandkids, all this stuff. It's like, oh, okay, I'm just still doing my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm over here.
Yeah. So the second half of 7th grade was in middle school, a new school. I was a new kid right after, the first day back after Christmas break. It became what I know now, bullying started right then.
Mm,
Being a new kid, being a little shy, being a little awkward. Puberty was not my best. I was not my best at puberty.
right.
Squeaky voice, just all the things, all the
Yeah.
things. And so, not so much with my peer 7th grade, but like the 8th graders,
Mhm.
during recess or stuff that we were kind of all conglomerated into one. And it was the 8th graders that sort of picked on me. And there were certain ones, looking back on it now, some of those kids that picked on me, and it wasn't until well after I graduated high school and into college that, oh, okay, you're a little gay boy, you're a little lesbian too. But
The projection.
the projection, and I didn't really learn any of that about it. I didn't make that connection until bullying in general, and especially for our GLBT community, came to light.
Right.
And then I realized that's what I experienced.
Mm, mm.
And I think to some of it, it started to form my personality, form my guard,
Oh, yeah.
and formed fear.
Mhm.
Fear of trying things new, fear of getting involved, fear of going up and just having small talk to someone, and God forbid, fear of asking someone out on a date.
Right.
Ooh, yeah, yeah, yeah. 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 So yeah, yeah. So I would say that middle school in Bowling Green was a little bit difficult. Now I was in band and I brought my flute with me and da 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 da, did all that. And it was fine because at that middle school, the band, the junior band got to march in the
Mm.
parades and stuff. So that was kind of fun. And so I really felt a sense of belonging. And luckily too, there was another boy in my class that played flute
Okay, okay.
as well. So, I wasn't alone,
Yeah.
and he was really gay. And what's funny is now he's this bear and lives in New Zealand.
Well, there you go.
It's so funny. It's so funny. Yeah. But It just went on from there. High school was a little better, but, I will also tell you the theme through this is there was still a lot of that, why am I here? Why do I have to take all these math classes? Da, 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 da. If the classes were things that I just figured I was like, "I'm never gonna use this," I was not a good student at.
Mhm.
But if it's things I was interested in, like I love science,
Yeah.
but I was so afraid of math, but I love science. When I got old enough in school to start taking the different electives and I took business classes and things, I loved accounting.
Okay.
I was a good typist, because we took typing back then.
Yeah.
I even took shorthand, and I was, like, one of the few boys that took shorthand, but I said, "Why not? Can I do shorthand today?" I barely remember it, but yeah, did. Now we just record everything.
Right.
But yeah, yeah, so I think I learned a lot of things that, these are the things that boys or men do, whatever, and these are things that girls do. Now, I will say that, not one of my proudest moments, but obviously, there were other gay boys in my high school class and,
Mhm.
because it was a conglomeration of several different schools that merged into one.
Right.
So, it's a fairly large high school. So, um, I started to identify who the other gay boys were, at least that I knew, and then all of us at one time experimented
Mhm.
with each other. It's just weird how that happened, but it did. But then my experimentation went a little further. Before you know it, I was still getting bullied by, like, not really bullied, but by, some of the football players or some of the jocks and things like that. And, before you know it, I'm providing them services.
Alright.
So it's kind of like I got a secret. And so I wasn't bullied anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So kinda I'm just surviving,
I was
like,
surviving
the
and
bullying,
and
yeah.
and and yeah. So I did what I had to do, and, yeah, it was fun, okay, but I look back on it. But, but anyway, I know I need to get into that. I could spend so much time on high school, but high school, college, and all that,
Well,
I
I
did
will
better.
ask, like,
Yeah.
when did you start drinking? When was the first time you got drunk, or was it drunk?
First time I got drunk, I was 16. I was
Okay.
16. It was at my first job. My first job was in the optical business at this Pearl Vision Center in the mall this new mall that opened up in my town.
Mhm.
You know, Once again, I felt like, okay, I belong somewhere,
Yeah.
and then got to know people that worked in other stores and stuff. And then one of the guys that managed this little shoe store, he was really cute. Oh my God. And he said, "Hey, we're having a get together at my apartment complex after, Saturday night after the mall closes and all that. Come on over." And it's really
Mhm.
funny because it turned out being in the community room in the apartment complex that I lived in when we first moved to Bowling Green before mom and dad bought their house. It was kind of weird. But anyway, so, I'm an underage drinker,
Mhm.
obviously, because drinking age is 21. They had, I think I've heard it called hooch, and I've also heard it called trash can punch. Basically, a lot of liquor and maybe some fruit punch together.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I was drinking those, and those are pretty tasty. They're pretty tasty. I drank more, and I remember after several, I did go to the restaurant. I remember getting up, and I was just like, "Ooh, oh boy," And then I realized that I said, "Well, that's kind of cool," So
Mhm.
I just continued to drink,
Yeah.
And as I continued to drink, more of my gayness came out, blah 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 blah, and it didn't get sick or anything until I got home.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, I drove home. So that started my
Yeah.
sort of drinking and driving thing. And by that time, I was the only kid in the house. My sister and brother had either got married or whatever and moved on.
Right.
But I remember coming in and I really didn't have much of a curfew or anything. I don't know if mom and dad were just kind of by the time I was home alone, it was like, "You're good."
Yeah.
And I never really caused any problems or anything, though I guess they trusted me. So I remember getting home and I went to the bathroom and I slammed the toilet seat by accident. And the next thing you know, I'm just puking my guts.
Yeah.
Got myself cleaned up. And then, Sunday morning and all that, my mom comes in. She goes, "Well, how are you?" I was like, "Oh, feels okay. Good for you." Yeah,
Got it.
because mom drank. I mean, both my mom and dad. I mean, they drank. They belonged to the country club and they did all this stuff. But I will tell you, I never saw my mom drunk. I
Mhm.
saw my dad drunk one time because he played golf and they would have drinks at every hole. So
Oh, yeah, yeah.
beer, yeah. But I did make cocktails for my mom. So that was probably the first I would sip them and make sure they were right. In the quantity of bourbon or vodka, whatever drink she
Oh,
was
yeah, yeah,
having.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So there was that. But that first drunk was really that thing was like, oh, while it didn't end the best way, but that sensation, it was that warmth, it was that feeling like I was not me. I was
Right.
not the David that walked in there. I think a lot of us say that, I felt prettier. I felt like I could dance better, more sociable. I could talk to anyone. I had no inhibitions,
Mhm.
you know, a- and I could also talk a good talk, which usually involved a bunch of lies
Right.
because I would, inflate myself better than what I really am. Because still even inside, there was that barometer saying, "You're not good enough, you're not good enough. You need to, tell them what they wanna hear."
100%.
Yeah, even if what I'm doing or where I live, what I do and all that is perfectly good, to me it wasn't, because
Right.
I was comparing my insides to your outsides of what I
Right.
thought was your outsides.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
so
that really started that cycle.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it is always interesting, because the first time I drank, and got drunk, I mean,
Mm.
that exact feeling, everything in my mind just went quiet and I was able to have fun, quote unquote, and just, yeah, be this different person, but didn't really, I mean, obviously, in high school, like we didn't have quick access to alcohol, right?
Mhm.
That my sisters never bought me any. No,
Damn them.
if I asked.
Mine didn't either.
But, but I didn't feel like I needed to rely on it or anything like that, but
Yeah.
when did it start becoming kind of like, I don't know, were you like an
Wha
everyday drinker or like when did it start
No.
escalating?
I would say that I would have with alcohol because obviously later in life, other things came into my story,
Right.
but alcohol, it was not a daily thing. I mean, I could but, I liked going out to the bars, and
Mhm.
the way this all started is I equate my drinking to what I call coming out,
Oh, yeah.
okay? This was, I think, probably a sophomore in college and, met more gay guys, some
Yeah.
my age, some older. Things
Oh.
started to expand a lot. I was working in the mall. I had this and that. There were just so much going on. I was like, oh my God, so much outward stimulation. The more times I went out, like to do these parties and drank, I felt included afterward.
Mhm.
Like back there, saying, "Oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, that was fun last night." Da, 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 da," just
Right, you had
that
something to
type of
talk
thing.
about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I felt like I belonged to something.
Yeah.
But Bowling Green is about an hour and 15 minutes north of Nashville, Tennessee.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're like the southern end of Kentucky. And in Tennessee, at that time, the drinking age was 18.
Okay.
Kentucky was 21. So Fred said, "Hey, we're going to go to Nashville. We're going to go to some gay bars." I was like, "Gay bars? What? I never really been to a bar at all.
Let
Yeah.
alone.
Let alone a gay bar." I said, "You want to go?" I said, "Well, yeah, yeah." And so we went. There's four of us. And of course, I had the better of the 4 cars, so I drove, and that started that really, really was like, "Oh my god, I wanna do this over and over and over again."
Yeah.
18-year-old walking into a bar, 4 18-year-olds walking into the bar, just doe eyes like, "Oh my god," and I was like it was this dance bar called the Village not the Village Station, that's Dallas, it was called the Warehouse 28.
Uh-huh.
I think it's still around, I don't know, but I remember there's music I had never heard before. I'm hearing, a lot of disco, Sylvester and the Weather Girls and just all this stuff. It's like, "Oh my god." And there
Mhm.
were so many people, so many
Yeah.
guys dancing and all this stuff in all ages, and then we go back to the back bar where there's pool tables, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm feeling a little weird back here." But I stayed. It's like, "Oh, what's going on?" But I'm feeling something. But it was just this sensory overload to this extent. When you go to a gay bar, I found that what I was there, I found I got a lot of attention really quick.
Yeah. It's like the feeling of inclusion, but, like, that you got from the mall parties here, but times 10.
Yes. Yes, and it was a much different sense of you've heard
Out
that
of
song,
the
"So Many Men, So Little Time"? Yeah, it was like that, like, "Oh my god, where do I start?
it's
Line
the
up."
"I'm home." Yeah.
Yeah, so once again, that was one of those things, and then I learned that I kinda call that my coming out.
Yeah.
Yeah, discovering the gay bars and realizing that it was someplace that I was like everyone else,
Mhm.
and, we were it was there was that sexual tension, that desire, I think connection more than anything else.
Yeah.
Um, I also learned that, I sorta like a little bit older men
Mhm.
at that time, and that kinda was a theme there, was I really interested in drinking? No, but you go to a gay bar and they serve booze, serve vodka, you're gonna have to drink.
Right.
So that's what I did.
Mhm.
And the only thing I knew to drink were the drinks I made from my mom. So that's what I did. And then I remember not so much, I didn't get drunk that time, but I remember another time I came by myself.
Okay.
That was, yeah. I don't know if I was nervous, excited, scared, or whatever, but I was shivering. I
Mm.
was like, am I cold? Am I hot? I was like, oh, just vibrating some way or something. But yeah, and I did get drunk.
Yeah.
I did get drunk, and I remember this absolutely for you. Met this guy, and we were dancing, or didn't realize that I could dance the way I danced, and just all those things, and it was just like this huge, oh my god, it's like, oh sweet mystery, I have found you,
Mhm.
and it was on, and so that was my pattern. Friday night, Saturday night. And then there were a few times that I would drive there on a weeknight and go to like small little bar. That's where I learned how to play Pac-Man,
Mm.
on the little machines or,
Yeah.
yeah, all that stuff. And some of those bars there, maybe some older guys there. And I got a lot of attention, I think
Mhm.
they refer to me as chicken. I think today they call them twinks. I don't know, but that's what it was. That's what it was. And yeah, that started it. That really
Yeah.
started it. Started it so much that eventually my work at Pearl I was still working at Pearl Vision. Eventually, I asked, to be transferred to Nashville, and
Mm.
I did. I got transferred to Nashville, and the store that I was at was one of their busiest stores, and they promoted me to, like, an assistant manager, and lo and behold, it was just, like, maybe a mile away from where all the gay stuff is. How about that?
The serendipitous.
Yeah, yeah, so that before you know it, I had my pack of friends,
Yeah.
and then just the chaos began, but
Mhm.
also some of I started feeling some of the consequences.
Yeah.
My first consequence was really hangovers,
Mhm.
and a Friday night hangover and knowing that I had to be at work Saturday morning, and Saturdays were just those balls to the wall busy day, and how I felt some days, like, "Oh my god." But I went to work.
Yeah.
I did not miss work. Did not. And then, I say, "Oh god, I'm not gonna do this again for a while." And before you
Mhm.
know it, I'm at the bar that night,
Yeah.
up to the same crack. But then, the rest of the week, normally, I would not go out.
Right.
But eventually Friday night, then eventually, "Oh, let's go out Thursday night." Because then my
Mhm.
friend said, "Oh, we're going to such and such," or "We're going over here." I mean, in Nashville, you have the Vanderbilt University campus.
Right.
Well, I discovered that, so I was like, "Oh, okay." Just the world just I mean, it's like all of a sudden this world just expanded
Yeah.
beyond what I ever could have imagined, and so I wanted every bit of it.
Yeah.
'Cause that was like, "Okay, this is what I'm missing."
Yeah. Kinda almost
Yeah.
making up for lost time,
Yeah,
maybe?
yeah, I think so. I think
Yeah.
so. And, growing up, I did not do without. No, I thought I did,
Mhm.
but I didn't when I look back on it. And I know my parents are doing the absolute best they can. My dad worked hard, my mom worked hard. I did not do without. I had a brand new car when I turned 16.
Mhm.
When I think about it, life was good.
Yeah.
Everything was okay. But when I got out on my own, I'm gonna blame my parents on this. They created a lifestyle for me that I could not afford to uphold on my
Mm.
own.
Yeah.
And drink and party and do all the things and buying clothes. I mean, it was the whole thing. It was that all of it.
Right.
And my pattern was most of my drinking, if it wasn't like at a small house party or something like that, was at a bar.
Right.
Didn't have liquor at home. I did not really drink at home, but I wanted to go out.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it was I wanted to go out to be social. I wanted to go out to get picked up or the sexual, the connection part, or
Mhm.
drinking, or it
Yeah.
could have been all of the above. But it was all involved in that.
Yeah.
And it was that process of getting ready to go out on Fridays, knowing that, oh, I'm going to go out with friends tonight, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and blah 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 blah, and Prince Charming is going to come sweep me off my feet, and all that,
Yeah.
and that
So when did
excitement
it start
happened every weekend.
turning?
Yeah, after about my second year in Nashville, things started to get dark.
Mhm.
I found that I was at the bar a lot,
Mhm.
having lots of random sex. I also discovered other places to go to uh, have sexual encounters or connections.
Mhm.
And so that became a deal. I discovered, what do they call it? Video head cleaner nowadays,
Yep.
and all of that. And mind you, it was only $5.
A
But,
little bit of a price difference
a
now,
little bit
but
of price. And it was a different formula too.
yeah.
But there were all these things and more things I discovered, but what happened is I was spending almost every bit of my paycheck
Mm.
on those things and not taking care of my bills. I had a car payment, and the bank was calling my parents like, "Hey, da 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 da," because it was a bank that they bank at, small
Mm.
town. My dad was well known, all that. So mom and dad are calling. I'm avoiding them. I was renting a room at this house in Nashville. It was like 140 a month. Everything I managed to pay that, but pretty much everything else was my partying. I just
Yeah.
my activities. So the gigs started to be up, and I had to move home.
Mm.
Things got bad. Things got bad. So Pearl Vision let me move back to the store that I was at in Bowling Green, and they were happy to have me back. So that's what I did.
Yeah.
And it's hard moving home after you've been away for a while.
Right.
It really is hard. But I got back in the groove of things, and just continued working. Now, by that, was not old enough legally to drink in Kentucky, but I would still be driving to Nashville.
Mm. Okay. Yeah,
So
I was
it's
gonna
like,
ask,
okay,
did
I'm
the
living here,
drinking
but I'm
slow
just
down?
no,
Yeah. Okay.
not really. But what I would do is I would tell my mom and dad that, "Oh, I'm gonna be doing such and such, and I'm gonna stay over at so and so's house," that they knew. So, okay, whatever. But really, I was lying, and I drove to Nashville,
Mm.
do what I needed to do. And sometimes, most of the time, I usually hooked up with someone, stayed overnight there, and somehow or another managed to drive back that next day. Sometimes I didn't, and I drove home drunk.
Mm. Mhm.
And so I was definitely leading this double life. My homosexuality and everything with my parents, we didn't talk about it. I'm pretty sure they knew at that time,
Mhm.
but I was sneaking around. I was being devious, lying about where I'm at, what I'm doing, or mom said, "Who's this boy that keeps calling you so and so?" Or this other person called you and he didn't sound like a boy. I was like, "Oh, that's a friend." So really just, I mean, things were starting to pile up, and then that was the first time that it was a problem. But I had no idea it was my drinking or
Right.
my activities. It was just that I was living
Mhm. So when
so
did you so when did, I guess, other substances or when did you move to Dallas?
okay, well, here's how this happened. I was in Bowling Green living at home and things were just really not working out
Mhm.
well, because I was doing all this driving to Nashville and stuff, and it was causing problems. So I decided to join the Air Force.
Okay.
I didn't end up doing it, but I'm also one of these people that it was better for me to ask for forgiveness than permission. Like,
Okay.
I bought subsequent cars at the dealership where my dad was known at, and the bank would just finance it. And I would say, "Hey, I want a new car." I was 18. They said, "Oh yeah, we're going to put you in this," and "Oh yeah, we'll call your dad and get it all set up." So there was kind of that. So a lot of times I did things without asking because I did not want to. One, did not want to be told no,
Right.
and did not want to have to justify what I was doing or be judged.
Right.
That was a big one. So anyway, so I decided I was going to join the Air Force and everything, and went through and got the test and everything. Then I told my dad, and my dad was just like, "You will not do well in the armed services. You're not a fit." And I knew
Right.
it. Yeah, after getting and my sister, by that time, she was married, and she was living in Louisiana, and she called and she goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "I don't know what else to do." And then she goes, "I've already talked to mom and dad. If you want to come down here and live with us, they just bought a new house and they had this garage apartment that I could stay at." And she goes, "You can come down here, finish school, and work in the optical business or something down there." So that's what I did.
Mhm,
And during that time, I was there maybe a year, year and a half.
mhm.
I didn't drink.
Okay.
I didn't drink. And that's when I discovered working out. My sister worked out at the YMCA. I discovered gyms. All that gives is like, okay, well, I found another place where my people are.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, and, so that's where I lived, and so when I moved to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, I didn't finish school, but I worked and got a job at this optical company. It was one of the first of its kind that would do all eyeglasses in an hour. It was kinda like basically lens crafters
Mhm,
when it was just one store. And so I did very well there. And ultimately, they started expanding. And so eventually they expanded to Houston. So they said, "David, will you go to Houston to help open up our Houston market?" I said, "Sure."
mhm,
And then they said, "Hey, we really like you here. Would you like to be our first district manager?" And so I was
mm.
22,
Oh, wow.
maybe something like that. So, next thing I know, I'm making more money than I ever had
Yeah.
living in Houston, hired all my employees and things, and yeah, there were a few gay ones.
Mhm.
Yeah, they kind of knew I was gay and whatever. And it was about 6 months into it. They said, "Hey, would you like to, we come out with us?" And so we went to Rich's in
Mhm.
Houston dance bar, and we also went to JR's and the mining company. And
Yeah.
so did our little rounds, and I was like, "Oh, okay, okay, that was cool." And we drank and drank and drank. At Rich's that night is also where my first attraction to Hispanic men came about. Because I was like, who are these people? And so here I'm at Rich's with my friends, there's two girls and a guy. And this really, really cute Hispanic guy comes up to me and asks me to dance. And I said, sure. His name was David, da 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 da. Long story short, we were together for over 10 years.
Okay.
He had some lesbian things going in there, I guess.
Yeah. The
But
U-Haul.
what was fun is he was as much into me as I was into him. He's a few years older. He was a little more established, and we drank and did things the same way. We were almost like a carbon copy of each other
Mhm.
in many, many ways. And then ultimately, we would go to happy hours at the bars. And then back then, the happy hours, like at the mining company, were 3 for $1. Basically, if you ordered a rum and Coke, it would be 3 shots of rum and Dash Coke in like a taller glass. And we would
Yeah.
drink those. And they were a couple bucks, back then. It was cheap. And yeah. So that was that next phase. That was like, hey, I have a boyfriend. And eventually I moved in with him. We go doing things, we traveled, da 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 da. I got real close with his family. Eventually, my mom and dad came down to Houston to visit, and they stayed with us. And that kind of started like my mom said, "Okay, here's the deal." I said, "If you want to come visit and be with me, this is the deal."
Right. It's not a phase.
It's not a phase, right? It's not a phase. And so that's how that pursued. Ultimately, in '87, David worked for the phone company, Southwestern Bell, back in the day. It's now all AT&T.
Yep.
But anyway, his work needed him to relocate to Dallas.
Okay.
He was like, well, funny how funny that is because we're starting to open our Dallas market. And so I just told my boss, the VP of operations, said, "Can I open the Dallas market?" He said, "Sure." "Can I move there?" "Sure." That's what we did.
Okay.
Yeah. So we ended up in Dallas in March of '87, and just my career kept going. Obviously, discovered the bars here.
Mhm.
When we first moved to Dallas, the phone company put him up in temporary housing, corporate housing over here in Town Square Apartments on Fleetwood Oaks.
Mhm.
Little did I know we were right in the middle of Oakland, and that was a pretty gay apartment building. We were on
Yeah.
the 5th floor right over the pool. That was when I discovered really, even some in Houston, discovered some speed.
Okay. Yeah.
They called them, it was called Molly at that time, these little black Mollies, they were like little capsules.
Mhm.
And then David had a friend that, introduced me to what we called crystal at that time.
Mhm.
It's not like the crystal meth that you see today. It was a different, I don't know, but it was fun. And before you know it, I've discovered ecstasy. We went to, I think we went to what would be considered a circuit party in Dallas
Mhm.
kind of thing, and we discovered that, and we're like, "Oh my god, what is this?" And so
Yeah.
that's when the substances started. So
Mm.
next thing you know, when we're getting ready to go out on a Saturday night, we would, be getting ready, and we would have maybe a cocktail, but then we'd also have a little bump of something else to get us going, and then
Mhm.
we would go out, and we stay out till 4 or 5 in the morning. Then we'd end up at Rivershon Park doing stuff and at different places, so it progressed.
Right.
It progressed quite a bit, David started having some problems at work, and also with him by the time he hit, like, his 30s and mid-30s, I was just kinda getting into my 30s,
Yeah.
and for some reason, I took to Dallas, and Dallas took to me like a moth on a light bulb.
Mhm.
It didn't so much for David because he really, really liked Houston. He really did not wanna move to Dallas, but he did for his job. So, ultimately, my drinking and running around progressed where I was not being completely faithful in the relationship, and things came to a head. It was still financial because I was all of a sudden spending a lot of our money,
Yeah.
you know? And so we separated, broke up in 1992. By that time, we owned a house. First house we bought together. Oh my god, we were freaking out. It was a $95,000 house. We were like, "Oh my god, could we afford it? Could we afford it?" And, he went his way, I went my way. I moved, to Oaklawn. Well, actually, it was right off Knox Henderson at that time, and then
Mm.
my partying and drinking just continued on. It progressed.
Right.
And, to the point where I was working out at the gym, I was a member at the Centrum Sports Club, and that's where all the gays went,
Mhm.
kinda like where they all go to Equinox now, it was kinda like that,
Okay.
and that's what I did, and I was just so focused on all of
Right.
this, so yeah,
The lifestyle of it all.
the lifestyle, and I wanted that, and I wanted to be that A gay. It was about who I was running around with and blah, 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 and I would do and say whatever it took to do that.
Right. So,
Drinking a lot more, drinking a whole lot more because it was all about going out.
at any
Being social.
point, did you ever think of, like, slowing down, or was there, like, a point at all?
No, no, it was like I had the accelerator down to the floor,
Mhm.
and it was just wonderful. It was, like, fabulous and this and that, and, I realized too that when I was under the influence of crystal meth or crystal, I had no inhibitions, and I had the cleanest house in town, but, just I would go shopping and wanted to be all this fabulousness and spend a lot of money on things and do this and do that. I would still manage to go to work for a while, but then I had got this pattern of missing work on Mondays and there wasn't a whole lot of consequences at that time,
Mhm.
at the level at the job I was at. But I was definitely hitting consequences.
Yeah.
I might be running a little behind on my car note, and of course I couldn't just drive any car. It had to be a BMW or something like that.
Right.
It was all about image.
Mhm.
And once again, the financial end of it really caught up with me. So a lot of my bottoms, if you say, of it started of the financial nature. I was in financial ruin.
Mm.
But the way I ended up in AA, this would have been in '98.
Mhm.
By that time, I was partying hard, not really drinking, but
Right.
doing everything else. And my circle of friends, it's like the earth turned, it tilled the earth, and a whole new, different circle of friends showed up that were doing things that I did.
Right.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
wasn't the teetotalers. So I had my happy hour friends, and then I had my bar friends, and then I had my friends,
Mm.
and that was a lot of debacle, craziness. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, yeah. So '98, I was, having a party weekend with some friends, and one of my friends I was pretty close to, he called me on Sunday. He wanted to make sure I made it home okay. And I
Gotcha.
said, yeah. And I was just like, I said, this is just getting so hard and so old and da 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 da. he just out of the blue, he said, a friend was telling me about Alcoholics Anonymous. And he goes, I think I'm going to go. Do you want to go with me? And I was like, okay, sure. 'Cause I think I was at that low point. I was like, well, what, what could it hurt?
Right.
Maybe I'll learn how to control my drink, control what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And that's what we did. So we ended up at 11 p.m. At Lambda Group on Butler. Had no idea there was a gay AA group, any of that. And the 11 p.m. meetings when they had them, we called them candlelight meetings.
Mhm.
And so we didn't have the lights on other than the basic lights and our candles. We
Mm,
sat around in a circle. And, to this day, some of those people that were in that meeting are still at Lambda today
that's
from
awesome.
1998. It's really cool. And
Yeah.
so that's where I sat and listened, and I was, like, sobbing because I heard my story in what those guys, because typically when you have newcomers, the direction of the meeting will focus on step 1 and what it was like for the people in there,
Mhm.
kinda look for commonalities, and so, yeah, we both got a desired chip, and that started our journey.
So that was the
That was the start.
yeah. Well, 'cause
Yeah.
I was like, 'cause it was another form of the connection that you found
Oh, it
at the
was. It was
beginning
a
of the bar.
whole new connection.
Yeah.
And even after the meeting, we went to IHOP on Mockingbird right there by
Mhm.
the New Fine Arts and all that stuff. We had coffee till 2 in the morning. It was a Sunday night. Of course, get up and go to work, but I did. I mean, I would say that I was probably still a little
Just doing a little
high.
detox.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, we tried our best to do 90-90.
Uh-huh.
You know, we got a sponsor. We had the same sponsor. I mean, we were so codependent on each other. It was insane.
Yeah.
It was insane. But I remember going to some of the big meetings.
Mhm.
At Lambda back in those days, your 6 p.m. meetings during the week, like Monday nights were huge. And then the Saturday night meetings at 8 o'clock was like the huge speaker meeting.
Mhm.
And it was like, oh my God, I was so intimidated. And there were people like, I remember some guys would give me a card with their phone number on it, and I was like, "Oh, I think this guy wants to date me."
Mm.
One of the guys that did it, I sometimes would share about that meeting, and he'd be in, and he said, and I said, I thought that he was giving me his number to call that maybe we could go out or something. And when we come into her, said, yeah, and I've been waiting for your call for the last 30 years. But, I didn't. The only thing I could equate is, a gay guy giving me his phone number. I could only think of one thing,
Right.
that we're going to go out or was it going to be a hookup. I did not know how to have platonic friendships with relationships with
Yeah.
other gay men.
And
So
that's
I
pretty
learned that.
common, too.
Yeah, it's very common. I learned that in AA.
Yeah.
I really think now, in the world that we are now, probably it's more common
Mhm.
for gay guys to have just that platonic friendship and run around in packs and, all that. But for my era, I don't think it was.
Yeah.
And we had to learn that.
Right.
We really did.
Well, I think because of just yeah, of society, of the acceptance of it
Yeah.
all, it's like you
Yeah.
had to I mean, the whole hanky code thing, of
Yeah, I remember that.
doing
Yes,
the
yes.
earring, that whole thing to, like,
Oh, yeah, right
signify.
earring or left earring
Uh-huh.
or whatever. I do remember that. Yeah, yeah, that is very true. That is so true.
And so, you said that was 98 or
That was 98. I
98
did I
and
made it to 90 days, and I had a relapse in, like, really March of '99. It
okay.
was, my friend and I, we were invited to this, Academy Awards watching party that we would go to every year, and we knew what was gonna happen. But we said, "We're gonna go, and we're gonna go together. We're gonna hold each other, we're gonna help each other accountable. We're just gonna have water, sodas, things like that." And we were
Mhm.
not more than an hour into the gathering, and we both were walking in the kitchen, and we just said, "Fuck it.
Mhm.
Let's have some wine."
Did you
Before
think
you
it like, you're like, I got this, we could control this," or was it just like, just everything out the window, we know what we're getting into?
I think that I probably, it's just a glass of wine.
Yeah,
It ended up
at
being
least the
4 or
first
5
drink.
glasses of wine, but, it was that's what we hear all the time. "Oh, it's just a glass of wine, and I'll, you know, no one's gonna know. It's not gonna hurt." And that's how it happened. But, before the night was over, we were, at a bar where we knew we could get crystal meth and ecstasy, and there we are.
Mhm. How long did that, I guess, relapse?
Yeah, well, what was funny is, when we were at the bar, we, decided to call our sponsor.
Mm.
and said, "Hey, we're at such and such, and we're not sober. We are not sober at all."
Yeah.
Yeah, and he said, "Okay, well, call me when you're done,
Yeah.
if you're
Okay.
done." And so ultimately, I did talk to my sponsor a couple of days later, and we
Mm.
met. And he told me I really just thought I will never be able to do AA again, and my chance for sobriety was up. And I really didn't know if I wanted sobriety, to be quite honest with you. I knew I
Right.
needed it. I knew I needed it, but it was just other things were more important.
Right.
So I remember him telling me, and there were some areas in the big book that said, sometimes you're not ready. And if you're not ready, you might need to continue doing some controlled drinking to find out if you're really an alcoholic. Because it says a lot of alcoholics will either stop and start working the steps. Or if we don't, we will go on to the bitter end.
Mhm.
And the bitter end is either institution, jails, or death.
Right.
So he said, David, maybe you're just not done. Maybe you need to just go out and just see how it works for you because you could always come back. I said, can I? Yeah, anytime you want.
Mhm.
I was like, so I felt quite relieved, but I also felt quite energized because I had some work to do
Yeah.
to figure out if I was an alcoholic and a drug addict.
Real
And
test it
so,
out.
yeah, and being the overachiever that I am,
Yep.
it went from there. The consequences happened again. It just all of a sudden is like the minute I kept on going, the shit started happening.
Right.
It did. And so I came in. A friend that lived in my apartment complex, I didn't know this at the time, was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I met him, he was not, and he was a mess.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, he's not a mess. And so he had seen me at Lambda when I was coming in for my little 90 days. There were people around me. And so Christmas Day, he called and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Ugh." I said, "Nothing." He said, "Well, I'm going to Lambda." "Oh, can I come with you?" Yeah, as I decided I was done. So I got a desire chip at the new meeting on Christmas Day of 1999.
Mm.
And that started a cycle. And I think at that point I was ready. I was serious to get sober.
Right.
And Jimmy, he's no longer with us. He passed away, but he kind of adopted me a little bit
Mhm.
and kind of helped me navigate as me, not with me and my friend navigating together, but navigating for me,
Which is
and
so
for
important
what I
too.
wanted is so important. And it was interesting that when I came back and got my desire chip, there were people that I did not know
Mhm.
that came up. They were so glad you're back. We had not seen you in meetings for a while. We didn't know what happened. And so we assumed you went out.
Right.
And that's one of those things. Meeting makers make it,
Mhm.
because you gotta make sure you're always seen in meetings, 'cause if you're not, people think you went out. No, maybe not, but, I mean, because sometimes we know what our world is like, that if you're all of a sudden not seeing someone at meetings for a length of time, your first thought is like, "Oh, no. Oh, no, I hope that's not the case."
Right.
But sometimes it is. And so
Yeah.
that really started. So, I got a new sponsor, did my best to get into the middle of the meeting,
Mhm.
in the middle of the group, and things went on. And then eventually I got a wonderful, wonderful sponsor, George S. Actually, since passed away. It was George Stevens, and he sponsored a lot of people. He was an older man and just loved him. And he opened my eyes to a lot of things about spirituality. Being raised Catholic, I just kind of went through the motions of
Right.
what I'm supposed to do. It was very parochial. You go to church, you do this, you do that, you go to confession, all this stuff.
Right.
But I really learned about spirituality and what it meant to me.
Mhm.
And also, he had a very large bouncy base. He had a beautiful little house over here in Oak Lawn. And so it was family. Christmas morning, we always met at George's house.
Mm. Mhm.
And then we go to meeting. And of course, being at my sobriety date, it just was even more special.
Right.
You know, Boy, I mean, there was times where you ever have those times where you're either someplace or doing something or at an event or in a meeting, and you all of a sudden you realize, okay, I am 100% present,
Mhm.
not thinking about the past, not thinking about the future, thinking about right now, looking around the room and loving everyone in that room.
Yeah.
and loving exactly what you're doing. And it's that this overwhelming feeling of gratitude
Mhm.
that just it's like a warm hug. It just
Yeah.
brings you in. And those were the experiences I was having. I mean, I was definitely riding a big spiritual pink cloud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I no, that's beautiful. I love it because it takes time to get there,
It does.
and some people don't get to see that, and it's unfortunate,
Yeah.
but it's like once you do get there though, it's just really kind of like yeah, I mean, just spiritual. It's very I remember the first time I had it, I mean, I was by myself, but I was on a cruise, my first
Okay.
sober cruise, which was interesting,
Because
and
what do most people do on a cruise?
right,
Like,
drink.
yeah.
Yeah. My very first cruise, I definitely drank. But yeah, I remember just going out and it was a dance party out by the pool. I go up on the deck by itself and I'm just looking out at the stars. And as it's like my eyes are adjusting, I start to see more stars and more stars. And then it just became one of those beautiful moments because I know if I was drinking, I wouldn't be there. I'd be at the bar or no, probably just at the bar. Let's
Yeah.
be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. Why mess with everything else?
Right, and it was just it was so peaceful and, it was just yeah, it was one of those moments that just makes sobriety worth it,
Mhm.
makes everything that all the hard work that you put into this, and it just kind of, like, encapsulates everything in that
Mhm.
moment, and it's just
Mhm.
like, I wanna recreate these kind of moments,
Mhm.
over and over
Mhm.
again, and so,
Yes.
yeah, it's definitely those moments that make it worth it, so
I could also equate it to, like, back when I had my first feeling of being drunk and that sort of thing, and then when you have this profound spiritual experience,
mhm.
what you just described, I would say, was a profound spiritual experience where
Mhm.
all of a sudden it's like, "I get it. I get it,"
Yeah.
and everything's perfect.
It really was, and
It was a
it's just
perfect day.
yeah. Well, and I like it because it's like I created it in that
Mhm.
sense,
That's right,
and
and it was your
I didn't
your
have
moment.
substances, yeah, like, it
Mhm.
wasn't anything on the outside, external, it was all me, and so I really yeah, I kinda live for those moments, and I
Yeah.
try to recreate it last I just went on a cruise a couple of months ago, but it wasn't the same. It was just a special moment there, but I found it in another way while I was on the cruise, just
Yeah.
finding those excuse me, those special moments, so well, before we wrap up,
I
wait,
know. We may
we
have to
could
do a
talk.
part 2. We haven't even gotten to COVID.
Yeah. We might have to do well, yeah, we'll probably do a part 2, but, um, see, and that's why I say about the outlines,
It's
it's
just how
like,
it goes.
because it's just a conversation, right? It's
I
just one of
know.
those,
And, we're covering my favorite subject, me.
me.
It's about me.
But, so how long have you been sober since December 20
Well, from December 25th, 1999, through it was probably June of 2014.
okay.
And then, I was in a relationship and it ended. Things were not going well at work. I started using and I will just back up and say for some of that time when I was sober, I was what I call a dry drunk.
Mhm.
I stopped going to meetings, stopped talking to my sponsor, kind of that attitude of, I think I got it. You know, I don't have to go to meetings. I've been doing a lot of meetings over the years. I'm good.
Mhm.
I've got enough buildup medicine in my system to keep me sober,
Yeah.
you know. And so ultimately, while I wasn't drinking or using drugs, behaviors, everything else was pure alcoholic and drug addict. And ultimately, it cost me around my relationship and my job.
Mm.
And one of the biggest jobs I had ever, ever, ever had. And so it was a significant loss. So once again, I remember my that first sponsor saying, "Maybe you're not done."
Mm.
And so it took a little time and then ultimately came back in October 2015 with my tail between my legs in just a sobbing mess. Not because I had not hit a financial bottom like those other times. This was absolutely 100% an emotional spiritual bottom where I said, "I can't do this. I can't do this." And I knew where I needed to go.
Mhm.
'Cause, people that relapse and you got a little AA knowledge in you, you're never gonna enjoy another drunk or another good high because you got this voice saying, "You know what to do. What are you doing?"
Right.
Yeah, or me, I was thinking, "Okay, is my life unmanageable right now? I don't know." And one of my sponsors said, "Well, do you think just sitting around wondering if your life is unmanageable, do you think that's sober thinking?"
Right.
It's like, "Well, maybe not." Maybe not, because most people do not try to gauge, "Well, okay, I'm having these drinks or doing these drugs. Is my life unmanageable?"
Mhm.
Yet.
Right.
Yeah. So this was a very different bottom for me. And then that started my journey's been going on since then.
Very nice.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this time just had to really I knew the gig was up,
Yeah.
and I wanted to be done.
Yeah, and it is really common too, though, like, for people to maybe go into AA or therapy, whatever program, you want to go into, and,
Mhm.
for whatever reasons. There's so many reasons, the ultimatums, court, whatever it is,
It's a lot of reasons, yeah.
but ultimately, it's like you have to do it for yourself. You have
You
to want
do.
it for yourself, right?
You do. You do.
And I always like to see kinda when people do come in, because I'm part of my online community. When they do come in, they will say the stories, "My spouse told me it's either this or a divorce," or those type of ultimatums. But
Exactly.
it's so great to see how it transforms over time to where it's the ultimatum, but it ultimately becomes down to them, that they wanna
Yeah.
do this for themselves.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's where it works, is you
That's
have
a
to
sweet
want it.
spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really, really is, and, one of the things I love being in AA, and this is the only place that I've ever felt 100% me
Mhm.
and where I absolutely belong. No one can tell me I don't belong here and can't come back.
Right.
And, I can put in as much as I wanna get out.
Mhm.
The more I put in, the more I get out of it.
Yeah.
But the thing I love the most is seeing, meeting a newcomer,
Mhm.
and it's the very first meeting. And, you could tell when it's a newcomer walking in.
Yeah.
I go up and said, "Hey, how you doing?" And, they start telling you how they're doing. I said, "Okay, why don't you come sit by me? Let's get you
Yeah.
some coffee." And sometimes it's like that. But, I said, "Well, what brings you in?"
Mhm.
That's always interesting. Sometimes, "Well, I had a DUI." I said,
Yeah.
"Okay, I know why you're here." They said, "I don't know. I don't know if I don't think I'm an alcoholic." I said, "Well, you don't have to say you're an alcoholic.
Right.
Just sit and listen. This is a time to find out if you are, but also you're doing what you need to do for your restitution for your DWI. Go ahead and get your paper signed, do the deal. Act as if you are."
Mhm.
And then what I love seeing is 6 months to a year later, they're a totally different person. They realize that I wanna be here. Okay, yeah, oh, I forgot to get my paper signed, but yeah, I'm here. And they're involved,
Yeah.
and you just see this life come back into that person. That is an absolute that's one of the things you just don't wanna miss
Yeah.
when you're around newcomers, and I love that because there's a lot of guys that I know that was highly suggested by the courts that they come to meetings, and then they just continued on. And I think ultimately that is the nirvana of everything,
Yeah.
for the system to work to help someone recover.
Mhm.
I mean, you got the financial thing and, there's a lot of pain involved in a DUI.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
never gotten a DUI, but I know I surely should have many, many times. But, to realize that someone can say, okay, I've done that. I had to walk through it, but now I'm ready for something different.
Mhm.
I don't want to go back to that life. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I just want my life back." I said, "Do you really? Do you really want that life back? You have the opportunity. You can create a whole new life and
Exactly.
build a whole new life, and you just don't know where it's going to take you.
Yeah.
You really don't."
Yeah, it is. I always say it. It's a wild ride, and sobriety is definitely not boring,
Mm-mm.
because the ups and the downs of it all, but it makes it worth it. And
Yeah.
I do remember that you saying about the newcomer coming in, and we just had a gentleman in my group. I was hosting the meeting on his first meeting that he came into,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
he just celebrated his 1 year today.
Oh, that's
So
great.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just really special, and he's such a character, and to see it just yeah, like you said, that life come back and that zest for life and, the wanting to do things. It's so true. So,
Mhm,
yeah, thank you
mhm.
for reminding me of that.
Yeah.
And also speaking of newcomers, I always do ask my guests, what advice would you give someone if they're questioning their drinking or they come to a meeting, or what advice do you give to them?
Well, here's my thing, because I remember for me when I was starting to kind of question, like, okay, boy, this is not fun anymore or any of that. I would think is the first thing is listen to your gut.
Mhm.
If you're asking, what's AA like? I might I might benefit from that, or I'd like to know what it's like.
Yeah.
First thing, if it's someone that's never been exposed to Alcoholics Anonymous, is, check out our AA website, check things out. But also, too, find what we call open meetings. And
Mhm.
I would usually, I said, hey, if you're comfortable, if you want to come to an open meeting with me, come on, I'll be happy to take you. And it's not that I'm going to bring you in as a potential new member, it's not a recruiting event, but just, let you see and just open and create an open invitation.
Yeah.
If they want to go, great, we'll do it and just talk and listen to what they have to say. Because a lot of times, if you let it just be there, the stories will start to come out. And if they're not an alcoholic, they may be impacted by alcoholism one way or another.
Right.
You know, or and then from there is like and then you start listening for the commonalities.
Mhm.
Not everybody has to hit bottom the same way. Some people have this view about an alcoholic as, the last house on the block, we're living under a bridge, wearing clothes, this, that image. And it's not like that at
No.
all. But also, too, meetings are very diverse. We got people from all backgrounds, all walks of life. And if you open your ears, close your mouth, and listen, you will be amazed what you hear and who you might hear it from.
Mhm.
It could be the most unlikely source
Yeah.
that says something at that moment that changes something in your trajectory of your sobriety. You'll always remember those things that said, I remember when so and so said this. It was clever, but made sense to me.
Mhm.
And it made my sobriety more palatable. I
Yeah.
remember someone telling me, they said, all I have to do is be sober today.
Mhm.
Tomorrow's another day and I will deal with that then.
Oh, yeah.
And what told me is like, okay, I just have to worry about today staying sober and um not to future trip or
Mhm.
regret the past, and just stay right here.
Yeah.
And I kind of do that with everything. Yeah, you have to plan some things out, of course, but you're not planning out exactly the outcome of how everything. And all I have to worry about is today.
Mhm.
And then before you know it, you accumulated a lot of those just for today things. And then you've got 3 months, 6 months, a year, and it just grows from there. So, yeah, I think that's the advice I give. And also, too, life happens.
Yes.
Life happens. And, if you come in, say you want to get sober or whatever, but for whatever reason, something happens where you're not, well, if you want to continue getting sober, come on back and come back do it as often as you need to.
Mhm.
There's no magic number that says, okay, once you've had 5 relapses, you're done. You'll never be able to get sober. That's
Right.
not true.
No.
That's not true. It takes what it takes. And I think that is called allowing some grace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think statistically, it's like, on average, it's 7 times.
Hmm. I believe that.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would like to say that I know that I'm going to be sober for the rest of my life, but that's a big chunk of time to think about and worry about.
Right.
But knowing that I just have to be sober today,
Mhm.
that's good. And I also know I'm not immune to that first drink unless I go to my meetings, work with my sponsor, read some literature, be of service, absolutely be of service,
Mhm.
and go to, and just do the deal and try to be a good, honest person.
Yeah. I mean, that's all we can do.
That's all we can do. It's like I never got life's little instruction booklet until I learned about the 12 steps,
Mhm.
the big book, and kinda how to manage life and maybe cope with life on life's terms.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think yeah, I'll always say I'm not gonna say I'm never gonna drink again because I don't know what the
Mhm.
future
You don't know.
holds,
Yeah.
but I can at least say I'm not gonna drink today, you know?
Just for today.
Yeah, because the thought of that is yeah, that's so overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I really like that, and yeah, it's almost like planting the seed. Just plant the seed,
It
try it
is.
out, get curious.
Yeah, because you never know when you're at a work function that maybe there's a happy hour or, you're out and about with people you may not normally know, but
Mhm.
you're not drinking.
Yeah.
And it'll say, "Oh, can I get you a drink or something?" You kinda have to know, "Well, how am I gonna deal with that?" And I say, "Oh, no, sometimes if I'm comfortable with people say, "Oh, there's not enough alcohol in this place for me." I've had enough. But, people say, "Oh, sure, would you like a water or whatever?" And
Mhm.
said, "Yeah." And then, if I feel comfortable, I said, "Yeah." I said, I no longer drink." And sometimes that's just enough to open up the conversation. Not on purpose, but that's just how it goes. And a lot of times I get very positive feedback. So,
Mhm.
I admire you for doing that. How much sobriety you have? And it just starts that. And before you know it, they've got a family member
Oh, yeah.
or they go, I've been thinking, yeah, I don't drink every day, but when I do go out and drink, I really tie one on hard, and I don't like the way it makes me feel, you know. And that starts. So what I think is like my part of my service work is to be that face and voice of Alcoholics Anonymous wherever I go,
Mhm.
and I want to make sure that what I'm projecting is a positive example of how Alcoholics Anonymous works. And that may be all it is. And I may never see or talk to that person, but that could be enough if that person realizes, when they find themselves in jail because they got a DUI, they go, I remember so and so telling me about this. I think I need to stop.
Yeah,
I've got enough now. I got enough evidence to show me that, yeah, I need to stop.
yeah. I like that. Well, David, we have reached the end of our conversation, but I do wanna thank you for coming on and sharing your story, and, I s
Oh, it's great.
I always think sharing our stories, kinda like what you're saying, one little thing can change the trajectory of someone's
Mhm.
life.
Yeah, it's very true.
But, I don't know if you can or if you wanna give a shout out to Dallas Lambda, I can link their website or, you know
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Dallas Lambda, the Lambda Group of Dallas is my home group, and it was probably the first LGBT A group in Dallas, one of the early AA groups for sure. Lambda's been in existence since 1978, and
Amazing.
two of the founding members are still with us. Tom H. and I think it's Hardy H. as well. They have in their mid 40s of sobriety. I think Harvey's been sober since 1970, as he puts it. And, you
1900.
know, yeah, and Tom H. has been sober probably just about as long. And,
That's
you
amazing.
know, they just they do one day at a time, you know? So Lambda's my home group, but, we're so fortunate here in Dallas to have just in the Oakland area, within a very small bubble, we've got Lambda, we've got, We Are Not Saints, which is a newly formed group that kind of developed during COVID.
Mhm.
And it's a wonderful group to go to and lots of strong sobriety. And also now we have Crystal Meth Anonymous meetings, and those are very strong here in this neighborhood. So the fellowship, the ability to get help and not
Mhm.
be alone is here in our gay community for
Yeah.
sure. Any bars that you may go to, if you're just drinking a Coke or something, half the time they comp it.
Oh, yeah.
I manage to go to the Eagle for the first time ever
Mm.
last Saturday night with some friends. I was so nervous. I don't know why, but it was fun. It was fun. But um, we had a Red Bull. That was the strongest thing. We had a Red Bull on the drive over, and then we were drinking Topo Chicos.
Yeah.
And it was fun. And then we went to Fuel City Tacos afterward, and I got home at a reasonable hour. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
that was
It's
fun.
right down the street from me, so when we
Yeah,
go to because I still go out to happy hours and, hang out with everybody, and they're always like, "Well, let's go to the Eagle," and I'm like, "Perfect," because that's on the way home for me, so I
yeah.
go there for about 30, 45 minutes, and I'm like, "Alright, guys, see y'all later."
See you later. Yeah, because
But, yeah,
you don't have to open the place and close it.
that was a foreign concept for me.
First one there, last one to leave. And
Uh,
eventually they say, you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
All right, David. Well,
All
thank you
right.
so much
That's
again. I really
awesome.
do
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Yeah, it's fun being involved.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. So, all right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to like this, review it, subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. But most of all, make sure you take care of yourselves, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. If you connected with this episode, feel free to comment and leave us a review. You can find me on Instagram at OutandAboutAF. Take care of yourself, and we'll catch you on the next episode.